My name is Virgil, and this is my Excel to Dream story. So in 2010, we made ELC our home church. We started serving as greeters, then eventually we got promoted to ushers, and in 2012, I got promoted to usher captain. So our marriage was good, and then right around 2014 is when we started having a lot of issues. A lot of fighting going on in our marriage, getting to the point to some of the fights were so bad, I would just get up and leave. I wouldn't come back for a couple hours. Sometimes I wouldn't even come back for days. Not realizing what I was doing to my wife, not realizing what I was doing to our marriage, but it just got to the point I just wanted out. Right around September 2014, we was at a corporate event. I was walking around with Chuck Phelps, and that's when the phone call came through, and that's when I was told my wife had an accident at work and it wasn't good. I instantly started running back toward the hotel so I can get to the hospital as soon as possible. That's when I knew I felt God sit there and tell me, no matter how bad you wanted out of this marriage, your wife needs you not leaving this marriage. After about an hour, they finally let me go back and see her, and once I walked into the room, I saw my wife just strapped to a board. Couldn't speak, couldn't talk, couldn't move. She had to go through a lot of therapy in the hospital. That's pretty much where she had to learn how to walk again. She had to learn how to write again. She had to learn how to speak again. She had to learn how to eat again. And that was troubling for me because I was upset at God because of this happened to her and not to me. And so that's the reason why I walked away from the church. Around 2016, that's when she started asking me, when are we going to get back? I wasn't ready, but as a man of God, you know, it's not the wife's responsibility to get us back in the church. It's my responsibility. I was just concerned of how much she was ready, how much she was willing to get back in the church. And at the same time, if I was ready to get back into church, knowing how upset I was. But being upset at God was not the reason why I didn't want to get back in church. There was a lot of things that were still going wrong with me, looking in the mirror, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. Why am I so upset at God for doing this when it wasn't Him? Around April of this year, that's whenever we started getting back into church. In the middle of April, we were both released from our jobs that we were at. We were having struggles this whole year, trying to get caught up on our bills, trying to get caught up on everything. That's when we really started getting plugged back in, going back to church, getting her around people again, getting myself around my three, getting myself around the men of the church so I can get myself better. With me being the only one working, put a lot of struggles on us. It put a struggles on us financially, put a struggle on our marriage. But I knew as a man of God that God would eventually heal her from this and would help us get out of the situation that we were in. So on June 2nd, I received a phone call. It was from a guy in Florida. He wanted me to move down there and take over operations of his company. They would pay all moving expenses, pay me a very good salary if I would move down there. I was very comfortable with the company because it was something that I'd done in the past. It was the machines that I dealt with in the past. So I was confident that I could get the job done. All I had to do is pray about it. It was the weekend of June 18th. I finally felt God tugging me. So I went up front and I prayed with Pastor Mark. He tells me, don't worry about the phone call. Just make God first in your life. The phone call would be second. A couple weeks went by, still no phone calls. I was really starting to get worried that this phone call would never happen. I talked to a couple of my three, asked them to pray that the phone call would come through. God had different plans. On June 28th, my owners of the job that I was working at came up to the company. We had a meeting. That was our first month to hit bonuses. They turned around and gave me a check, and I didn't even bother to look at the check because I was figuring it was $600. They looked at me and they said, you're not going to look at your check. And when I looked down, it was $2,000. So on July 2nd, a guy came through my line. I was up front helping my employees try to get caught up on some of the vehicles. When the guy pulled up, I recognized him. After I got through wiping his car and getting him taken care of, he kind of looked at me and said he hadn't seen me around in a while. I told him I was struggling, going through some issues and stuff. But the one thing he told me was I was a godly man, and godly men need to always stick beside each other. He shook my hand, told me he loved me. He drove away. Once he drove away, I looked down at my hand. He left me a $100 tip. So a couple hours later, I see him driving back through. He says, hey, you know, your guy's up front. They cleaned out my truck, but they didn't take this cup. Could you make sure you grab it and throw it away for me? So I reached inside, I grabbed the cup. He turned around and said, hey, I love you. And then he drove off. I got ready to go throw the cup away. Once I looked down in there, I noticed there was money in there. I took the cup into my office, I sat down. As I opened up the cup and looked inside, there was $3,000 in the cup. I was never imagining that I would have got $3,000 that day. At that point, I called my wife and told her to come up there. Once she showed up, I had told her everything that had happened. And just the excitement from both of us knowing that God has answered our prayers this month, we were waiting on a phone call. We were waiting on to get out of here. We were waiting on to move to Florida. But God had different plans. God says, no, you're not moving to Florida. I'm going to answer your prayers and you're going to stay right here where you belong, right here with your family of choice. In the Bible, it says, how can I trust you with the big things if you can't even handle the small things? So in June, to me, the small thing was God answering my prayers financially. The big thing for me is my wife being healed from her headaches for the past 2 years. Well, that was able to happen. In September, we was able to finally find a doctor that would do the injections for her to try to get her some relief. And as of now, almost a month later, she's got 50% relief from her headaches. She's been able to get a job. She's been able to go to work, and it's been able to help us financially through the last couple of months. Thank you, Pastor Keith and Pastor Sheila, for always speaking into us and showing us how to love one another and to never stop whenever you're going through hell.